5 in the morning, and the air outside is sharp enough to sting. The alarm hasn't just gone off, it's declared war. The world beyond the window is still drowned in darkness, but inside the small flat, a faint light flickers on. Alex sits on the edge of his bed, his breath visible in the cold, his eyes heavy but awake. He doesn't reach for his phone, doesn't scroll, doesn't snooze. He just sits there for a moment, feeling the quiet. The kind of quiet that forces you to face yourself. The mirror across the room reflects him in fragments, a tired face, an unshaven jaw, shoulders that once carried dreams but lately have only carried excuses. He walks over, bare feet pressing against the cold wooden floor, and stares at himself. It's an uncomfortable kind of honesty, the kind that burns. For a long moment, he doesn't move. He just studies the reflection, every scar, every sign of the comfort he's lived in. He whispers under his breath, almost as if testing his own conviction, "You've wasted enough time." He remembers last year, 2025, how it started the same way, with promises and plans that dissolved as soon as life got inconvenient. The same talk of, "I'll start Monday," or, "Next month I'll get serious." It's a cycle he's sick of repeating. Something in him clicks, like a switch flipped by frustration. This time, it's different. This time, he isn't chasing motivation, he's chasing change. He leans in closer to the mirror and says it quietly, but firmly, as if declaring it to himself and the world at once, "This is the year I dominate." The words hang in the air, heavy and certain. He throws on a hoodie, ties the laces on his trainers, and grabs his gym bag. The streets are empty, washed in the dull orange glow of streetlights. The wind bites at his face, but he doesn't flinch. Every step feels symbolic, like walking away from who he was yesterday. The city sleeps, but he's already awake, already fighting. When he pushes open the gym door, the lights flicker on in sequence, cutting through the darkness. The hum of fluorescent bulbs, the faint metallic smell of iron, the echo of his footsteps on the rubber floor, it feels like walking into a sacred space. No noise, no people, just him and the grind. He walks up to the squat rack. His reflection stares back from the gym mirror, still tired, still uncertain, but behind that fatigue, there's a spark. His hands wrap around the cold steel of the barbell. It's heavier than he remembers. His mind starts whispering the same excuses that have always stopped him. "You're too tired. It's too early. You can start tomorrow." But this time, he answers back. "No, I start now." The first representative burns. The second one feels worse. By the fifth, his muscles are shaking, his breath is ragged, but his heart is alive. The pain isn't punishment, it's proof. Proof that he's here, that he's moving, that he's not the same man who used to give up when things got hard. Each repetition feels like stripping away the weakness, the laziness, the doubts that haunted him. He keeps going. Sweat drips down his face and hits the floor in slow, heavy drops. He can feel the pulse of his heartbeat in his neck. And yet, somewhere between exhaustion and effort, something shifts. He realizes domination isn't about beating others. It's not about showing off or bragging online. It's about conquering himself, the version that chose comfort over growth, the voice that said, "Later," instead of, "Now." He drops the bar, breathless. The sound echoes through the empty gym, loud and satisfying. He leans forward, hands on his knees, lungs screaming for air, but his soul feels calm. For the first time in years, he feels aligned with himself. No lies, no fake plans, no empty words. Just action. He moves to the treadmill. The first few steps feel heavy, but soon, rhythm takes over. His trainers slap against the belt in sync with his thoughts. Keep going. Don't stop. Dominate. Each stride feels like a statement, a declaration that this year will not be wasted. The sweat soaks his shirt, the breath grows harsher, but his focus sharpens. When he finally stops, his chest is heaving, and his reflection in the gym mirror is drenched, but alive. His muscles ache, but it's a good ache. The kind that reminds you you've earned it. He stares at himself again, and for the first time, he doesn't see someone who's trying. He sees someone who's becoming. The early light of dawn begins to seep through the frosted windows, turning the gym gold. He takes off his hoodie, wipes his face, and looks at himself one last time. His face is red, his hair a mess, his hands trembling slightly, but in his eyes, there's something new. Fire. He walks closer to the mirror, tilts his head slightly, and with a small, confident smirk says quietly, "This year, I'm not participating. I'm taking over." As he leaves the gym, the city begins to wake. Cars hum in the distance, the air smells like cold coffee and new beginnings. He walks home slowly, feeling lighter but more grounded. Every step reminds him that he's already started the transformation. Not just in his body, but in his mindset. He unlocks the door, steps into the quiet flat again, and glances at the mirror once more before heading to the shower. The same mirror, but the reflection is different now. The man staring back looks ready. Determined. Dangerous, in the best possible way. He knows the road ahead will be brutal. There will be days when he won't want to wake up, mornings when the bed feels too comfortable, nights when the grind feels endless. But that's exactly what domination demands, consistency through chaos. He pours himself a glass of water, downs it, and looks out at the rising sun. The city glows in gold and pink, like it's applauding his decision to rise early and fight. He takes a deep breath, stretches his sore shoulders, and smiles slightly. Because this time, it isn't about motivation. It's about mindset. It's about reclaiming control, one rep, one choice, one morning at a time. It's about becoming the kind of person who doesn't wait for permission to improve. And as the light fills the room, Alex whispers one last promise to himself: this is just the beginning. The weeks rolled into months, and the spark that ignited that January morning had turned into a steady, burning flame. The excitement that once came from novelty had long faded, replaced by something tougher, colder, and more reliable: discipline. Alex no longer needed the hype of a new year to move. He'd built something stronger than motivation: routine. Every day began before sunrise. The alarm would go off at 5, and his hand would never hesitate. He'd get up, lace his shoes, and walk out into the cold without a word. There was no audience, no one clapping for him, no one even awake to notice. But that's what he liked about it: the silence. The early hours became his territory. The streets belonged to him, the gym felt like his kingdom, and the weights were his throne. Inside the gym, the air was always thick with that metallic tang of iron and effort. The same familiar hum of the fluorescent lights greeted him each morning. He'd place his headphones in, cue up the same gritty playlist, and let the rhythm drown out the rest of the world. Every clang of the weights was a heartbeat, every set a conversation between him and his limits. The grind had become sacred. But make no mistake, it wasn't easy. There were days when his body ached so much he could barely lift his arms. His legs felt like lead after endless squats, his shoulders stiff from relentless sessions. He'd stare at the mirror between sets, sweat dripping down his face, asking himself, "Why are you doing this?" And the answer would always come, not in words, but in the steady thump of his heart: "Because I said I would." Outside the gym, life tested him in quieter ways. Work piled up. Friends called less often. Social gatherings started without him, because everyone already knew he'd say no. They laughed about his obsession, joked about how he'd gone full machine. But Alex didn't mind. He wasn't chasing approval, he was chasing progress. They couldn't see it yet, but he could. Every rep, every early morning, every sacrifice, it was building something invisible but powerful. He learned that progress was rarely loud. It was subtle, almost invisible. It was in the extra plate he could lift, the extra mile he could run, the steadier breath he took after a brutal workout. It was in how he carried himself, the quiet confidence in his stride, the focus in his eyes. He started to realize that domination wasn't a single moment of triumph, it was a series of small victories stacked on top of each other, built in silence and cemented by effort. There were days, though, when doubt crept in. Days when the weight felt heavier than usual, when fatigue wrapped around him like chains, whispering, "You're not getting anywhere." Those were the dangerous moments, the ones that broke most people. But Alex had made a deal with himself: he wouldn't quit, not even when it hurt, especially when it hurt. Pain had become his compass. The harder it got, the more he knew he was moving in the right direction. Sometimes, after an especially punishing session, he'd sit on the bench, drenched in sweat, staring at his reflection. His body had started to change, leaner, stronger, sharper, but it was his eyes that told the real story. There was no hesitation there anymore, no uncertainty. Just a relentless calm, the look of a man who'd stopped negotiating with his excuses. One rainy Thursday, he walked into the gym to find the heater broken. The air was freezing, breath visible, equipment icy to the touch. Half the members turned around and left. Alex didn't. He removed his hoodie, chalked his hands, and started lifting. The cold bit into his skin, but he kept moving. His muscles screamed, but his mind stayed locked in. He wasn't chasing comfort. He was training for control. That day, as he finished his final set, his reflection in the mirror looked like something else entirely. Not a man working out, but a soldier mid-battle. Outside of the gym, his discipline began to bleed into everything. His business began to grow, his focus sharper than ever. Conversations became clearer, goals more direct. He no longer wasted time on things that didn't serve his mission. His sleep improved, his energy multiplied. He wasn't just building muscle, he was building momentum. By March, something inside him had shifted permanently. He no longer needed to tell himself to show up, he just did. The grind had become part of his identity. People noticed the change. Even the same friends who once teased him started asking how he stayed so consistent. He'd just smile and say, "I stopped waiting to feel ready." And that was the truth. Readiness was a myth. The perfect day, the perfect moment, none of it existed. He had learned that if you only move when it feels right, you'll never move far. That night, as he racked the final barbell, he stood still for a moment, the echo of weights settling around him. The gym was empty, silent except for his steady breathing. He looked at his reflection, jaw clenched, chest rising and falling, and whispered under his breath, "You don't need permission to be great. You just need consistency." The lights flickered slightly as he walked out, the city outside damp with rain and fog. His hoodie clung to his back, soaked in effort. He felt tired, yes, but it was the kind of tired that felt earned. The kind that told him he'd moved the needle forward, even just an inch. And in that quiet, solitary walk home, he realized something vital. Domination wasn't about one grand victory. It was about showing up when you didn't want to, when no one cared, when the results weren't visible yet. It was about discipline so deep it silenced doubt. As he stepped through his front door and dropped his gym bag, the words echoed in his head again, words that had now become his law: dominate 2026. The year had come full circle. The same calendar that once stared at him blank and full of doubt now hung on the wall with scribbles of milestones, notes, and quiet victories. The man who once stood in front of the mirror searching for strength now carried it in every movement. Alex wasn't just surviving anymore, he was operating on a level that felt untouchable. The work had transformed him. The gym, once his battleground, had become a second home. The smell of iron and sweat that once felt intimidating now smelled like progress. The weights that used to break him now bowed to his will. He moved through his workouts with precision, not rushing, not chasing a number, just flowing, controlled, confident. There was no music in his ears today, no distraction. The sound of plates clanging, the steady rhythm of his breath, and the occasional thud of a dropped barbell were enough. He caught a glimpse of himself in the mirror, same place, same reflection, but not the same man. His shoulders were broader, his stance firmer, his eyes sharper. But what struck him most wasn't the change in his body. It was the calm in his mind. He wasn't chasing motivation anymore, he was the motivation. Outside the gym, his life reflected the same transformation. His business was thriving, not because of luck, but because of consistency. His mornings were structured, his thoughts clear, his actions deliberate. The discipline he'd forged in sweat and silence had spilled into every part of his life. He'd become the man people came to for advice, the one they watched quietly, wondering how he did it. But Alex knew there was no secret formula. The truth was simple, brutal, and beautiful: he never stopped showing up. It wasn't about perfection. He'd failed plenty of times, missed lifts, lost deals, fought exhaustion, but he never let a bad day turn into a bad week. He learned that domination wasn't about never falling, it was about rising faster every time he did. The setbacks had shaped him far more than the easy days ever could. Now, as December drew to a close, he stood once again before that same mirror that had witnessed his lowest point 11 months ago. He ran a hand through his hair, a small smile tugging at his lips. "You did it," he whispered. Then, after a pause, he corrected himself quietly, "No, you're still doing it." Because he knew domination was never a one-time event, it was a lifestyle, a decision renewed every single day. He sat down at his desk, flipping open the worn journal where it all began. The first page was smudged, the ink faded slightly, but the words were still clear: wake up. Get it done. No matter how you feel. That sentence had carried him through storms, through fatigue, through the moments when quitting looked easier. He traced the words with his finger, a small spark of pride warming his chest. Looking out the window, the city stretched before him, lights glowing like scattered stars, cars humming softly below. It was quiet, peaceful, almost cinematic. He thought about all the mornings he'd walked these same streets before dawn, when no one else was around. Back then, it was hard, lonely even. But now, he understood. Those silent hours were where champions are built. He leaned back, closing the journal, and took a long breath. His reflection caught in the window pane, a man forged from effort, discipline, and persistence. He didn't need to prove anything to anyone anymore. The mirror that once mocked him now mirrored power. He rose from the chair, grabbed his gym bag, and headed for the door. Most people would take the night off. It was the end of the year, after all, but Alex wasn't most people. He didn't celebrate effort, he became it. Before stepping out, he looked around the flat one last time. The weights in the corner, the journal on the desk, the faint glow of the city lights, all reminders of how far he'd come. He smiled, calm and certain, and whispered the words that had guided him every day: I didn't just survive 2026, I dominated it. As the door clicked shut behind him, the night air greeted him with a cold embrace. The city was alive, but he walked through it with quiet purpose, eyes forward, mind clear. There was no finish line for him anymore. Just the next step, the next challenge, the next version of himself waiting to be built. And somewhere deep inside, that voice, the same one that spoke to him in the dark a year ago, whispered again, this is your year. This is your time. Dominate 2026.